Thank you for listening to episode 275 of the Clive Barker Podcast. Please subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode every Sunday. We're everywhere you can find podcasts. This podcast is about Abarat 3 Absolute Midnight. If you found your way here on the YouTube version of this episode, and you were searching for this, it is not an audiobook. You can find that legally on Apple Books or Audible, etc. So please don't leave us negative comments because this is not an audiobook. We never pretended that it was. Ryan and Jose are joined by Markus Williams and Peggy O'Leary. Peggy worked directly with Clive to create an Abarat curriculum for her Kodiak Middle School English class. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram Celebrate Imagination Shop is dedicated to benefiting the Arts and Medicine program at Texas Children's Cancer Center. Up to 50% of the proceeds will support the program where artist Don Bertram volunteers monthly. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and celebrates and continues to be inspired by his art. He uses that inspiration to help kids through the Texas Children's Cancer Center, and we couldn't be more thrilled to continue to work with him. There's a news feature video that shows Don working with the kids at Texas Children's Cancer Center and his artwork. Click the side banner at www.clivebarkercast.com to find links to the videos and his Etsy shop where you can buy his prints, books, and support this wonderful program. Check out his artwork and find out what inspired me to buy The Sentinel in episode 257, Art and Inspiration with Don Bertram. I still need to hang that picture up. Okay, well anyway, without any further ado, here we go with the episode. Okay, well thanks. This is episode 275 of the Clive Barker Podcast, Abarat 3 Absolute Midnight, and we are joined today, Ryan and Jose, and we've got guests Markus, Justin Williams, and
hello everybody.
It's early, I'm sorry, and Peggy O'Leary is returning to talk about Abarat again. Good morning. Yep. I could say good morning for a short time because for everybody right now it's still morning.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though we're in 4 different time zones.
We're in different hours of the archipelago called the United States of America.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Very good.
Right now I'm in Outland.
Yeah. I don't know what you would call Ohio.
So it's 11, so you're in Nully.
Oh, yeah, that's clever.
Yeah,
cool.
And Markus is Obadiah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
It's 9 my time, so that puts me at, I can't remember.
Qualmha.
Oh, I'm on Qualmha.
Yeah. Oh, good. I can go to Tasmagore and go shopping.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a excellent. Ryan, you're like our Klep almanac.
Well, I just pasted the island times on every one of these Abarat episodes so we can reference it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and I've pasted in every character name that I've run into, starting from the first book all the way to the third.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah. Notes are very handy. They are appreciated.
90% of what I remember I get from looking at the names of the characters. Like, oh yeah, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So this volume 3 is, in many trilogies, the third movie is where everything goes dark, right? It's like, it's usually the part where everything goes super dark, and we're in that part of the act of the story where our heroes are in trouble and it looks like there's no way out, right?
Well, and for Clive Barker had described it as, because it's right in the middle of the climax, because it's the third book out of the fifth. So it has to get as dark as it possibly can, absolute midnight, and then before it can pick back up again in the fourth and fifth books.
Yeah, and it lives up to its title. I mean, it's a very, very dark book in themes and what it deals with, and
Well, for me, it's funny because I've been pushing my son to read these, and he's only 9, but he's a really good reader. So I thought, he could read these, no problem. And for Abarat 1 and 2, I'd be fine with it. But when we get to Abarat 3, this is only my second time reading it. I read it when it first came out, and I'm reading it again. I'm going, oh no, this is not a children's book. You can't read this.
It's a very, very dark book. And I know that Clive has said that he wanted his audience to grow up with these books as they matured in theme and what they deal with, and the darker aspects of the world and whatnot. And
and Peggy, the people that you taught Abarat 1 to would all be adults now, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I still hear from them with questions about Abarat, or like I got a text a while ago. What was the name of that book? I can't remember the name of that.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Adults with kids of their own, they're still harking back to Abarat.
And we should mention that we've mentioned this on previous episodes, but Peggy, you taught Abarat to Kodiak Middle School, and Clive Barker even helped you develop the curriculum, and he got on video chat with your students, and so you had a lot of, and you guys were featured in the book Beneath the Surface of Abarat. Yes,
all of that is true, and it was one of the most wonderful experiences of my career.
And one of the Imaginer volumes as well. You have an afterword, as well as you took the photograph too.
Yes, I was. Excuse me. I was so honored when they asked to use that photograph, because I think it's a wonderful photograph.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's great.
So when the third volume came out, did you have a chance to do that work again with your students, or at the time you weren't doing this anymore?
Let's see, when the third volume came out, I believe it was the third volume that, you can't teach 3 novels by the same author in public school. You'd have to have a course. You'd be teaching, Clive Barker's Abarat series as a whole course.
Right.
But many of the students would go on and they would read Abarat 2 and Abarat 3. And when, I want to say it was the third one, in one situation, he sent us a rough draft, and the kids were able to kind of look through the rough draft, and they made some comments. And I don't remember whether any of them were really anything that needed to be. In other words, they weren't editors for him. But it was such an honor for them to be able to see the work in action.
That's fascinating.
And this. Mm-hmm. He had already sent us a chapter from book 1 that we would put a big bulletin board all the way down the hall showing his first draft, longhand first draft, and then how it had evolved from that draft to the final copy. And
that's really cool.
Oh man, talk about teaching how to write.
Yeah.
So it was, like I say, it was the highlight of my career.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The one thing, rereading this book, one thing that really that I really noticed this time was that it seems like Abarat was in a really delicate balance, and there were all these forces and powers ready to pounce on and just destroy everything at the slightest little thing. And, Candy comes along and shakes it up, and, everybody's after, the Nepheri from below. We've got the Nepheri from behind the stars. We've got the Requiax from below. We've got Mater Botley and her army of Stitchlings. And we've got the 8 dynasties of the Zyavane, right? The fiends that just come and destroy everything. So,
yes.
Well, and plus we don't really know what Rojo Pixler's plans were with his army of Comexo kids.
Mm-hmm.
So those poor people of Abarat, I mean, do they even have an army or any kind of defense at all? It doesn't seem like it.
They have a council that seems to be about it.
Yeah, it seems like the
council does argue.
And the council got squished, right, by that demon that was summoned by the Zyavane.
It would appear so from when I was, although some did escape, because Izarith turns up on Ninnyhammer later on. Yeah. So not everybody died. So who knows? Maybe the council will come back.
I hope that the Terry cat.
Jimothy.
Oh, Jimothy Terry.
Yeah, I'm hoping Jimothy that he escaped.
So I think the council that interrogates Candy in the kind of the first part of the book, I think they were depicted in a way that it perfectly depicts bureaucrats and in a sense, bureaucrats who think that instead of serving the people below them, they're one of them. They're all building camps. They're all building camps for. That's one of the things. Like, Volume 3 is where the Nazis take over. All right, Abarat. It's enemies and horrible people on both sides. So we start the first book by seeing this old man, right? So it's kind of like it's a great entrance into the story. There's a blind man on a house on top of a windy hill by a cliff by the sea, and he's got a tarot deck, and it's an Abarathian tarot deck. So he can tell the future, and he can see characters out there who are doing things that affect the lives of the people, and he's all burned. And immediately my mind raced back to the second volume, to the story of the Carrion family, the Great Fire that destroyed them. The Orchard Fire, yeah. So I was like, oh, this must be Carrion Senior. This must be Zephario, and it is. So I was like, that's kind of a weird thing. I thought he was going to be brought in kind of a more surprising kind of like moment of ta-da, like the story is going to be like, he's Carrion. But no, he opens pretty much. The first chapter is like, this guy, he remembers the Orchard Fire, remembers his mother and his one only son that was rescued and stuff. And I was like, So he sees Candy in the cards, right? He sees Candy. She's somehow she's been depicted in the cards, which makes us think that the cards are kind of magical. And I have to say, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I got to listen to the audiobook, and I even bought a copy of the ebook as well because I didn't have my hardcover. My hardcover is still back in Portugal with most of my stuff, and it's been there for the last 7 years, I guess. So I had to, look around for pictures and stuff on the internet that relate to Abarat 3. So that's how the story starts. And the council, right? The council. So my point was that the council is just depicted as, these bureaucrats. And I think that Clive does a great job. I was really surprised when they started talking about camps for purebloods. And that's what I was saying, that it looks like the Nazis are taking over in Abarat. But there's camps for purebloods. And at one point, one guy is very keen on having Candy be tortured for interrogation. Yeah. So that's a definite turn, because so far in the first couple of books, well, maybe not so much on the second, but the first book is just a very happy-go-lucky place. The Abarat is just, hey, there's some things that are scary, but not that scary because, this person comes along and she pulls Candy into her own house to hide her, and there's a little kid there and all that stuff. And then, sure, there's a crisscross man and there's an assassins and monsters, but somehow it just seems like the fate is conspiring for her to be able to prevail, right? Even when she doesn't really know what she's doing, she ends up prevailing, or her enemies end up hurting themselves in their confusion. Yeah. But here, the third volume really takes a turn. Yeah.
Well, and we find out later that some of those people that have been nice to her along the way was not a coincidence, that they were part of this group called the Caliphate. That were all a bunch of sort of resistors, I guess you would say, right? They're following some kind of a prophecy, or they're trying to do what they think will not. To prevent the absolute midnight and all these other horrible things from happening.
I was a little surprised at that because even Filth, the monkey, is part of that network of agents. And I'm like, it seems like to this point, these things happened randomly, maybe, following some kind of prophecy of sorts. But at the same time, it seemed pretty random. And then but that's really very much at the end of the volume, where they find themselves in like a beach and an island. And it's like, oh, they're all there. And they say, we've all been paying attention to you, Candy, because you're important. So I thought that was just a tiny bit contrived. But moving along from that, so the book has 7 parts, and it's about the rise of power of Matter Motley. And what did you guys think about the Sack Brood? Did they do what you expected them to do? Because I had a completely different idea for them.
Well, it's hard to go. This was like 9 years ago, so it's hard to,
Yeah.
No, now that I think about it, I don't think that when I first read Abarat 3, I don't think that I thought that they were going to kind of stitch themselves together in like a dome over the Abarat.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Or glue themselves together, I think. Yeah.
We were seeing that they were these gigantic beasts and reptilian insects that were very menacing, and I thought they were going to take a more active role in taking over the Abarat.
Yeah, just fly around and kill everybody.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
And eat them.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, this book does a lot of things that you wouldn't expect it to do after reading the first 2 volumes.
Yeah.
And when I first read it, it was so vastly different than not only the first 2 books, but like what I thought it would be after the waiting a while for it to come out. That it was actually my least favorite upon my initial reading out of the 3. But over time, I've read it 3. This reread here was my 4th time reading it. It's actually become not only my favorite Abarat book, but one of my favorite Clive Barker books in general. Because it's dense, it's dark, it's very metaphysical, and it deals with a lot of adult themes that the first 2 books just kind of only touched on.
The feeling in the first 2 books, it felt like Candy had some time to look around and explore the islands and learn about all the different islands.
Yes.
But in the 3rd book, she is like going from perilous situation to perilous situation, on the brink of death, seeing her friends die. There was
losing a part of herself.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and seeing a child be killed because of her wanting to separate herself from Princess Boa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then on there was a quote here on page 318, of the hardcover. It's when when one of the Needle sisters is chasing her, is coming after her on the fever wheel when she's standing on the water talking to the Sisters of the Phantomaya. Right. And then one of the guys, I forget which, the actor, threw his machete out, and the quote is, the machete cut through her neck, and her head was thrown up towards the lightness of heaven on a surge of scarlet. And I'm like, oh my God, this is...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean, even before that, there's like a gigantic tree covered with hundreds of hanged people. There's people turning against each other in the darkness and just accusing them of being the ones doing that and lynching people. Yeah. There's a lot of violence, but that's like that painting with Goya, right? When reason sleeps, it produces monsters. Yeah. So when the darkness falls, these things bubble up to the surface, literally bubble up to the surface.
And again, I mean, Clive said that he wanted this volume to be essentially a kid's first horror novel.
Yeah.
Of the people or the kids who read Abarat as children and grew up in waiting for this volume to come out, they would be at an age to where this would be more their gateway into more horror, more adult novels.
But there are still going to be kids who read them starting like right now. They could read Abarat 1 and then read Abarat 3 in 6 months.
Yeah. That's very true. But that it is also a book about war, and with war comes some pretty horrific things. And it's also about genocide. And
yeah. Well, when you think about the Grimm stories, the Grimm brothers stories, they can be pretty bloody. They can be pretty violent, and people get eaten, heads get chopped off.
There was one thing I wanted to kind of run by you guys and just get your opinions. What happened to Malengo? Thank you. Gee, my brain is still waking up. Okay, so Malengo's arms got chopped from his shoulders, and his head got chopped from his neck. And reading that the first time, like, oh, really? This is really what happens? And in my mind, I was, after finishing the book, I thought, I wonder if Clive thought, no, that was too far. I got to walk this back a little bit. Do you think that happened, or do you think that he had planned for that all along, and that
I don't know. There's plenty of little fake out moments, like in the beginning of the book, in the opening chapter, Zephario's walking outside of his house, right? And he's walking, and all of a sudden he trips and he falls, and he's about to fall over the cliff into the Isabella, and then the little girl pulls him back. And I was like, oh, that was close. But there's a lot of those close shaves throughout the entire book.
Yeah, I think that was an example of showing how high the stakes are without going over the edge.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, literally, they were going over an edge, right at the end.
At the very end, But I just mean that these characters aren't immune to the atrocities that are happening around them.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Malengo, the head is also like flapping and flying and stuff, so it kind of doesn't seem to faze him, and. So
he says that's how they're born, right? They're born heads, and then their bodies grow back. So like a lizard loses his tail, I would say. Malengo, who's kind of like a lizard, he can grow his entire body back.
If this were any other book series, we if we read that, we would go, oh, come on. But because it's Abarat and we've been prepped for this kind of craziness since the first book, it's like, okay, I can accept that.
Well, now I did say, well, come on, when I was reading that part. when I'm reading near the end and I see that she's running away from the fever wheel, and then all of a sudden that there's this thing like a seagull flying next to her, and then it turns out it's Malengo's head. I was like, oh, come on. But I understand that the moment when that happens, the moment Malengo is dismembered, is a very high stakes moment where basically it's the last stand between Madder Motley and Candy Quackenbush. And it was necessary for Candy to go over that limit when she sees Malengo be dismembered, to be able to get the strength and the fire, the rage to attack Madder Motley and overpower her. So that serves that purpose, I guess.
I have a comment based on a response we got from Clive. My kids were all for a romance between Candy and Malengo, and so we posed the question. And I think actually I posed the question. I don't think it was one posed by the kids, but anyway, his response, and of course I'm not quoting him because it's been years, but it was something like, "Wait, what? A lizard?" And of course, we don't think of Malengo as a lizard. He's one of our favorite characters.
Yeah. It's true. And I thought about that throughout this book. It's like, is Malengo going to get jealous of this new guy who she's sort of falling for? What was his
Gaza? Yeah, because he's
Gaza comes out of nowhere.
Gaza,
I don't think that. I don't think their relationship has a lot of chemistry. It just kind of, he shows up and all of a sudden everybody's saying, Candy likes Gaza, Candy likes Gaza. And I was
Jose, as you were saying, the Malingo thing felt kind of contrived. There were two moments in the book that that upon first reading really didn't sit right with me and still kind of don't. And that's the falling in love so fast with Gaza and the Princess Boa being evil.
Yeah, it's funny. They just hijacked his boat, right? That's their introduction to this Gaza character.
Yeah. And you know, I am to give Clive the benefit of the doubt because the series isn't finished, and I'm sure that there is some reason why both of those things happen, but just where it sits now, it still feels uneven.
Yeah. Well, picking up a little bit, so Zephario decides that it's time to go back to see the Abarat one more time. So he takes off. Then we see Candy be rescued from the ending of the second book and being taken by boat to talk to the council. So she talks to the council. They want to know what's going on. They keep saying that there is a war coming and that she's part of it. And she's going to be the death of us all.
Yeah.
And for some reason, but nobody knows why. Nobody knows what's going on, really. And then she decides it's time to get rid of Princess Boa, because this is the time when Princess Boa starts becoming more vocal inside her mind. And she thinks that up to that point, she thought that was just herself telling her things. And then she realizes that, no, that is actually the soul of Princess Boa, which was hidden in her as a baby 16 years ago when she was eaten by a dragon on her wedding day to Finnegan Hobb, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I think it's really interesting that you know, and it's really poignant that, you know, if someone was born this way, that they would just think everybody's like that, and this other voice is just part of her, and it's just, you know, her internal monologue, and she would never stop and think, oh, maybe that's a second person.
Yeah.
That feels so realistic.
There was an article that came out a few years ago that said that some people do have an inner voice while other people think differently. And, you know, that some people talk to themselves inside their head, while others just kind of flash ideas and go by that. So I'm not sure exactly if that's entirely true, but do you guys have like an inner voice like that? Do you guys talk to yourself about things you want to do, or do you just visualize things?
I mostly remember things.
Most definitely.
I remember things in words more than pictures.
Okay.
I have running conversations with myself.
Yeah, me too.
yes, I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's funny because
that way I know there's at least one person listening.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
The teacher. That's the teacher in me.
Yeah.
How do I talk to myself? So someone will listen. Anyway.
Do you
Markus,
flick the
you brought a
lights
good
if you're
point.
not paying attention?
Pardon me?
I said, do you flick the lights off and on if you're not paying attention?
Never had to do that.
So, but Markus, you bring a good point about Princess Boa being bad all of a sudden. Kind of pulled me out of the story a little bit, because I was like, up to this point, it seemed like Princess Boa had always been depicted as like such a nice girl. Yeah,
she was like some kind of a savior figure of the Abarat, right? Because bringing her back was going to somehow correct something or fix some, you know, save the world.
Yeah. Well, Finnegan Hobb is the son of Day and Night, right? Yeah. So he's the son of a family from the Day Island and one family from the Night Islands. And Princess Boa was the daughter of King, I forgot his name, Wenceslao? Klaus. Yeah. And so it seems like their union was going to be, in a way, important, even though it would be more important because aristocratic marriages were always done in order to unify two houses that might have some issues. In this case, I don't see that was the case. I don't think Finnegan Hobb was representing any sort of major house that it would have made more sense for her to marry Christopher Carrion. But then what we realize in this story is that Princess Boa is not really all that wholesome. She's actually very selfish. She's very self-serving. She dominates Candy. She doesn't want to leave her head, but at the same time, she's tired of being in that prison. Mm-hmm. And so what Candy wants to do is she wants to see Laguna Moon, which is this witch, this woman with secret knowledge who people say she's crazy. And she's got two sons, right? One that was made out of all the goodness in her, and one that was made out of all the evil in her, mm-hmm. which was a chapter that I wish had been a little more expanded, because I wanted to know more about those two sons and Laguna Moon.
Yeah, but it was interesting that the son who was made out of all the good in her was boring, and she kind of rejected him, and
it was a slug.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't Clive saying that that we've all got both in us?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you if you tried to take all the bad out of someone, it just wouldn't work. And if they might be too vulnerable to abuse, just like Covenantus. I don't know how you'd say his name.
Yeah.
And
also, I got the idea that the goodness in you is more passive, whereas the evil in you is more spicy, I would say.
Yeah.
More attractive in some ways, more flamboyant. And
she felt bad that she was more interested and cared more about the bad parts of herself, by loving Jalo Begog, the bad mm-hmm. child, instead of Covenantus, the good child.
Mm-hmm.
I like the scene where she has to go up to see Laguna Moon, and all of a sudden she finds herself surrounded by all these creatures and noises and ghostly apparitions that kind of force her out, and she keeps going, and she keeps trying to be able to focus on Laguna Moon ahead of her, and it's hurting her. It's actually hurting her. She's feeling like blood coming out of her nose, and it's trial by fire that she needs to.
Yeah.
And then Laguna Moon says, "Don't you know the difference between something that's real and something that's dreamed?" And I thought that was a very interesting kind of mechanism that was put in place by Laguna Moon to prevent people from. It's like they have to get a little crazy to be able to go up to her and talk to her.
Well, she's about to perform very dirty magic for her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she wants to make sure Candy's at least up for it. She says it might kill her.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
And did you guys understand, or so I was wondering as I read this, did she understand that Princess Boa would try to suck the life out of her as soon as she came out?
Not until they were in the middle of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that she needed a body, and I think she might have thought that Princess Boa would just disappear like a bad dream fading away, but it was actually all about giving her another body, another solid presence, and it has to come from somewhere.
She becomes like Frank from Hellraiser.
Yes.
Yeah. So in a sense, Boa is kind of a psychic vampire and a physical vampire.
Yeah.
Well, and it's fascinating that Laguna Moon stops her from actually absorbing everything in Candy by commenting that Candy is just a commoner and she's below her. Yeah. And so she's not good enough to make Boa's new body.
Yeah.
And Boa goes off and takes her son.
Yeah.
But I thought that was an interesting reflection of people feeling that they're superior to other people for no reason at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it also puts a even more tragic light on Christopher Carrion than what we saw before, because the way he was duped by her is just so pitiful and sad.
Yeah, that's the thing, is he's constantly being manipulated by everyone around him and everyone who he loves and claim to love him.
So he's a terrible bully and tyrant to everyone below him because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking
and I think
Clive
did give us hints that Boa had, I can't remember specifics, but from the first two books, I'm virtually certain, the correspondence, the letters between the two and things like that. And she I don't know. Back when I was reading book one, I thought, is she leading him on?
Yeah.
And and then obviously now we know absolutely she certainly.
Oh yeah, you can build me a house to study my magic, but you can't come in.
Yeah,
the island of Huffaker.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you spoke about bullies. As all this stuff is developing and Candy is trying to get rid of Boa, we go back to Chicken Town, right?
Yeah.
And we see that Candy's dad has some sort of like unknown, incomprehensible desire to go outside every night and go through the city. And then he goes into a building and he finds these birds pinned to the floor and these voices coming from the corner. And I know that if you've listened to our Imaginer episodes, this shouldn't be much of a surprise, but there is a painting that Clive made of Caspar Wolfswinkel will return. So I'm guessing he's going to return on book 4, probably, because he died of a heart attack on the second book.
Do you suppose that her father is going to turn into Caspar Wolfswinkel?
No, I don't see it that way. I think because the painting looked just like Caspar, but like a zombified Caspar.
The paintings that I've seen online,
I think
like
that
zombie.
The hats, because Caspar's power resides in these 6 or 7 hats that he, wizard hats that he had. I think that the hats are going to leave Bill, and they're going to take over the Caspar Wolfswinkel body like a puppet. So as he wore the hats, they will wear him.
Well, the events in this book, that doesn't resolve, but you think maybe the hats are going to be disappointed in what a failure he is. I mean, the way that he tried to steal Candy's experiences with that machine, and it was a total failure, and he just looked like a complete fool.
Right. So Bill Krakenbush finds the hats and he fashions a vest out of them. And then somehow he becomes the figure of power in Chicken Town. They call him Reverend. He founds a church. I forgot the name of the church. Do you guys remember that?
The Church of the Children of Eden.
Children of Eden. Yes. Yeah. And I think everybody's just more afraid of him than actually respect him.
And it has a parallel in the Abarat. The Church of the Void, right, is the same thing.
Yeah, they say that as a kind of a joke near the end.
Yeah.
But Candy, we've seen her do this on the second book, right? She goes, she dreams, she falls asleep, and she drifts back into the hereafter, and she gets to talk to her mother. So her mother knows that Candy is in the Abarat, and she can communicate that way. But this time she's doing that just before she goes to see Laguna Moon, and or is it after? Well, never mind. But and then when she goes there, she's talking to her mother, and Bill Krakenbush shows up, and he can see her because he's got these hats now. They give him power, and that's when he decides that he wants to take her to the Church of the Children of Eden, and there's a weird machine there that seems to have some sort of Abarathian technology. Where he wants to drain his daughter of all her memories and experiences. And it's unclear what the machine was supposed to do. Maybe it's something for the hats. Maybe they need magic. Maybe they need the essence of Candy's Abarat experiences to power themselves. I'm not sure. Yeah. But that doesn't work according to plan, right? So that just does not work. She gets rescued back into the Abarat before any of that happens, and she also manages to partially destroy the machine. So like you said, maybe Bill is going to be seen as a failure by these hats, and they will eventually so that I don't know what happened to Caspar Wolfswinkel's body. Is it still in the hereafter, or did it get taken back in the giant wormwood boat? Well,
didn't the wormwood got destroyed?
Yeah, the wormwood was destroyed. Right. I don't think it says. I think that's something that we'll have to
how did Mater Motley get back to the Abarat after book 2?
Probably in her giant hand on the waters of the Isabella, maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe Caspar Wolfswinkel's body is still in Chicken Town. Maybe the hats will abandon Bill and they will find Caspar's body. So
or maybe they already have it hidden somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. But so after Laguna Moon's Island, that's where we start seeing more about what Matter Motley's plan is, right?
Yes.
Well,
and
going back to the hats and Bill Quackenbush, he had convinced Candy to go down there and do this horrible ritual to steal all her memories because he threatened to kill her mother, and which is horrifying. And you're thinking, how is she going to get out of this? I mean, even if she escapes, her mother's in danger. But she got Diamanda to say, "Don't worry, I'll protect your mom and your brothers."
Right, the ghost of Diamanda, right?
Yeah. And that's what I mean about adult themes is the things that happen in the Abarat you can chalk up to it's fantasy, but the things that happen in the hereafter are you're dealing with alcoholism and
domestic abuse, child abuse.
Like the radicalism of the church and the evangelical Bill and his congregation and just dealing with an abusive father and
right and this idea that getting a little bit of power amplifies what kind of a person you are. So Candy becomes this sort of savior person. She gets a little bit of power and she becomes this hero, and her father just becomes a terrible bully tyrant person. Bill was always just an absent alcoholic, and then it seems like he becomes jealous of his own daughter and trades the alcoholism for power that he gets.
He becomes a misogynistic, faithless bigot.
That's and
well said. Yes.
Yeah. And reading a book that's almost a decade old, and you it's so crazy to see themes that are happening all around us.
And his followers don't even they don't care about the religion. They're just afraid of him.
Well, and I mean, I don't want to get too political, but if you put Trumpism as the surrogate for this, have these.
It's easy to make that comparison for sure.
Yeah, you have like you guys said, the congregation. It's not that they actually worship him out of belief, but out of fear. And you get the same thing from the Republican Party. It's not that they agree with what he's saying. It's just that they want to keep their political position and their power.
Yeah.
And so, the party's just been traded to Trumpism
one of the biggest bullies of the first book is in that one of those scenes with Candy and Bill in the church. Mrs. Schwartz, the evil teacher.
Oh, yes.
Is totally subservient and obsequious to Bill, and
she's completely complicit. Yeah,
and the Abarat we discussed this earlier. They only have a council that can't do much. All they do is quarrel with one another, which can Jose, you were kind of passing that's essentially the Senate of in America that
sure.
All they do is fight. They don't do the bureaucracy. They don't get anything done. And you guys also talked about this at the beginning that it seems like things that the Abarat was so fragile that it descended into chaos and destruction so quickly. That's another thing that I personally feel living in America right now is how much the country has descended in such a quick time. You think that there were these checks and balances and the institutions will hold, but how quickly they've fallen.
Yeah, it's a societal collapse. But if there's one thing I can say is about the council is there's a quote from Frank Herbert, the guy who wrote Dune. Mm-hmm. I know the people remember Uncle Ben from Spider-Man says something like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
But Frank Herbert said, it's not that power corrupts. It's that power is magnetic to the corruptible.
Yeah.
And that makes more sense.
Yeah, those who seek... Yeah, essentially that those who seek to get power should not be the ones to hold power. So it's kind of a paradox in the people who should be holding power are the ones that don't desire said power.
Right. It's that when you consider, especially in government, or any sort of body that is meant to organize things for society. The problem is that when they're not serving the people, when they're just being like, well, okay, so you're not a representative anymore, you're just a loyalist to something above you, then it's flowing the wrong way. Yeah. And it's not supposed to be, I'm going to be up there in the spheres of power because I want to be powerful or because I want to get stuff for myself, which is what seems like a lot of bureaucrats do.
It's true. I mean, and on both sides, there's a lot of this big corporations and lobbies that control them, and they don't represent the people anymore.
Right. I mean, when you talk about corporations, I mean, what better example of corporations than Rojo Pixler in this book? The guy who created Comexo City, the guy who created the Kid. Yeah. And the Kid shows up in the book. What did you guys think about the Kid? Because for me, I thought the Kid was going to be more in on it, and it seems like the Kid is just really, really innocent. Like, I didn't expect the Kid to be so innocent. I thought he was going to be more like you guys got to buy Comexo stuff, and all that stuff. And it's like, no, he's just very innocent. He's just doesn't even know that what he is.
Yeah, he literally.
He's a real boy.
Yeah, Geppetto and Pinocchio. Yeah, he literally is just an innocent blank slate. I've always been drawn.
So you're saying Geppetto goes down into the depths and gets swallowed by the whale, just like Rojo Pixler gets swallowed by the Requiacs.
Well, and another interesting thing is that Requiacs didn't seem to be quite as evil as we thought they were, right? I mean, they stood up to Mater Motley. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what their plans are, and they seem to not like the Nepheri.
Yeah, which you can say. So you know the whole book is at the basis of you're having a war between night and day, and so this is kind of. Instead of east west, it's north south. Of this is now between the sea and the stars as well of the duality there. But as a Frankenstein fan, I've always really loved the Rojo Pixler and the Kid dynamic. And one of the scenes that we kind of skipped over is seeing Rojo descend into the depths of the Isabella. And he talks about how that he wants to make a city down there that will make the Comexo city look like nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's such a Lovecraftian scene of the Vorzangler who's with him. He says that he had a dream, and the dream was that when they went down into the depths to establish said city, that he dreamt that there was a city that was already there. And Rojo asks in its occupants, and Vorzangler says they'd gone thousands of years before. Great scaly fins they'd had, and beauty in their faces. There were mosaics on the walls, such bright, ambitious eyes. And it's like a Lovecraft story, just kind of put in there, because there's so many stories. Or like Dagon or something, where you have this character who has a dream of seeing this ancient city where there were these fish monsters or fish gods or whatever that are long gone but have been around for millennia underneath the depths of the sea. And it's a passing thing in the book, but seeing that, I loved it. And then knowing what happens to Rojo later. And with the Requiacs of becoming this Lovecraftian monster. Yeah.
Which is ironic in a way, because in the second book, we see that Rojo, as any good billionaire, he likes to go sport hunting. He likes to go trophy hunting. And he goes down into the depths to see if there's any other creatures down there, to catalog them, to find what they are. And then he ends up being the one whose head is stuffed and mounted, and the in a way the monster actually ends up taking him as a trophy.
Mm-hmm. And not to keep taking us back to politics here, but for those of you who have the hardcover, on page 44, there is a painting of Rojo or Rojo or however you want to pronounce it, but he sports a very Trumpian haircut. Or am I just crazy?
Well, that was probably painted in 2008 or 2009.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, you do have an eccentric millionaire who does want to build these giant things essentially in his name, and so
very true.
And he does have orange hair that is combed forward. So I don't know. Maybe it's a stretch. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Well, talking about pronunciations, one thing is, I've been surprised by a lot of what the audiobook narrator says. Like he says aberration instead of, I always thought it was aberration, but he says aberration.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of little things that he said, like he says Rojo, and I wondered if he got some kind of pronunciation guide from Clive, because, how could you even tackle these books without that?
I've always wondered that with audiobooks, is if they ask the author how to pronounce the fantastical names. Yeah, because I've never listened to the audiobook, so in my head it was always Rojo and things like that.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, it seems like it comes from rojo, which is red in Spanish, because he's kind of a redhead, right? I mean,
yeah, he's a redhead. So that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's how I got it. But there's little idiosyncrasies in the audiobook that are very interesting. I had to listen to it with like at least 30% on the speed faster, because he's just very slow talker. Mm. And when he mentioned, I think you said this, Ryan, when he's doing the voice of little John.
John Drowse. Yeah.
Drowse. He kind of sounds like he's yawning.
Yeah, he's like...
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would be, in his defense, it would be tough to come up with a different voice for every single one of those brothers.
Yeah.
I like the voice he does for Malengo. It's really, really a funny, peppy voice, very cartoony, I like it.
But a lot of other characters sound like that in this book. Yeah.
So this is the book that had a video trailer, right? So you guys remember?
It had several, actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The rebirth.
The rebirth of Christopher Carrion, which is one of the scenes that happens sometime in the book around the time when we're talking.
Yeah.
There's an island.
My favorite scene in the whole book is that scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had remembered the book trailer more than the scene in the book, and so rereading the scene, it's like, oh wow, this is kind of gruesome, and you get the backstory on this crab who lived a king on this island, on this little beach there.
That's the beautiful thing is, you grab this and you go, okay, it's a young adult novel, and not to belittle young adult novels, but like that scene of Clive could so easily have just said like, oh, okay, his nightmares resurrect him, and that's that. But instead, it's like this mini vignette short story about the life of this crab on this island, and
who just loved killing birds indiscriminately because he was the most powerful thing on the beach.
Yeah, it's like it's 10 pages of just essentially to say that Christopher Carrion was resurrected, but the writing in it is so beautiful, and that's another thing about Absolute Midnight that I love so much is I think that out of the trilogies, or the 3 books so far, the writing in Absolute Midnight is, in my opinion, the best. Clive isn't belittling his audience at all, or writing, say for children. But go ahead, Ryan.
One thing about that, this is the first book that wasn't as much edited by HarperCollins, right? I think that Mark Miller had helped with the editing on this before it went.
Yeah, Rob Humphreys was mentoring Mark Miller around this time, and I think they were both working on this manuscript, and Clive was still writing some stuff, kind of merging everything together, sleeping under his desk, and that I think Rob and Mark were typing stuff, and they were like editing it, and I think it was a very stressful time because they wanted to make sure that they could send this off to HarperCollins.
In my opinion, that was for the best then, because if that means that this had the least amount of others' hands tampering with Clive's vision, then
it really feels a lot like it's more unfettered, I guess you could say, than.
Yeah, because I mean, like, what other book is going to have 10 pages about just to say that one character was resurrected?
Yeah.
And again, the writing is so beautifully done of just describing how, you know, the nightmares are feeding Christopher and his resurrection. And he has like a Luke Skywalker moment where he sees a car in the shores of the island that he's on, the rocks that he's on, and he rises it from the waters.
Yeah,
and it describes it. Yeah, and it describes that there's a dead occupant in the truck that he rises. And then he blows it up, and you know, what's a resurrection without fireworks? Like it's such a really, really cool scene.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a throwback to the Books of Blood story, Sex, Death, and Starshine, because at the end, one of the characters, who's a ghost, says, what would the resurrection be without a few laughs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's... I know that, this book also sports a poem from Paradise Street, the play he wrote. So it's cool to see those little connections throughout his work.
Sure is. I'm very conflicted about Christopher Carrion. He was more tragic in the second book, and in here he still seems like a very flippy-floppy character. I mean, I find it hard to connect to Christopher Carrion's character.
I kind of got the feeling that he was following around Mater Motley to see what she does, and he was looking for an opportunity to betray her. But it's hard to tell.
That's what I got out of it.
Definitely, Zephario definitely impacts him for the better. The lullaby, and then then he does. He's certainly pretending to support Mater Motley after that, and then of course he saves Candy and
finding out that his mother and his siblings are all little dolls on her dress. I mean,
I
think that kind of destroys any hope of him ever even pretending to be on her side anymore.
Yep. Yeah. That was a big reveal in the book. You know, all the way through the series, her dress dolls and with their souls and everything, but we don't learn just how nefarious it is until this book.
And it made me wonder too if this was some kind of a test by the Nefari that setting fire to the orchard and burning up her family was her
cleansing herself of mercy.
Yeah, it was her initiation into their good graces or something.
Okay.
Good point. Yeah.
Maybe so. Yeah, it certainly was evil.
She cast out any kind of I guess not. You couldn't say humanity because they're not humans, but Yeah.
I have a question about Roho Pixler and Vorzangler.
Mm-hmm.
Vorzangler describes himself as human. So it makes it seem like he's from the hereafter. My question is, do you guys think Roho Pixler is also human?
I was actually going to bring this question up too, because it seemed like there were little hints here and there that maybe he came from the hereafter.
Right, and even the way he builds cities, just like we have cities.
Right, and he's kind of like an infection
industry
from the hereafter. You know, if you like in The Simpsons when they brought the frogs to Australia.
Oh yeah, that is a really good way to think about it. Yeah, that you would have somebody,
obsession with technology and electric lights, and I'm gonna shape the world to my standard of living instead of trying to adapt to the world around me like everybody else does.
Yeah, and again, it is, in my opinion, kind of Trumpian in that, he wants to erect these grand things in essentially in his name. And
he could have moved to any island that had daylight, but he moves to 1:00 in the morning and says, "I'm going to keep it light here all the time."
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you remember from book 1, when he does have Candy in his clutches, he really quizzes her about the hereafter. And I don't remember the details. I'd have to find it in the book.
It's true.
But I'm pretty sure he makes it clear that he would like to extend his Comexo empire into the hereafter.
Oh, so maybe it's more that he's obsessed with it rather than being from there.
Okay,
well,
so he's not.
You know, he could be originally from there, and now he wants to go back and take it over.
Or maybe he was from the hereafter, but it was like 300 years ago, so everything's changed.
Yeah,
could be.
We won't know till Clive tells us.
Yeah.
So after Candy leaves the council, she tries to escape from that island in a boat called the Sloppy. And then we cut to Matter Motley going to the pyramids of Zuk-Zuks.
Yes.
Which is where she's going to finally release the sack brood, which was a really scary, one of the scariest chapters in book 2 for me was when Christopher Carrion goes to the pyramids with 2 associates. One of them was that monster that didn't have a foot. I forgot his name, I think. Well, and he opens the pyramid.
Mendelssohn's Shape.
Mendelssohn's Shape. It wasn't the crisscross man. It was Mendelssohn's Shape.
Okay. And I thought that was one of the scariest chapters because they open the pyramid and they look inside and they see these pyramids are full of these giant weird bugs, some as big as a car, others small like centipedes, and they got all these multiple eyes, and they've eaten everything inside the pyramids, and they've dug down deep into the seabed of the Isabella, and they're spreading, and they have all these eggs hatching, and it's these are going to be released when Matter Motley starts her plan to instill absolute midnight. And so we have this chapter where Matter Motley goes into the pyramids. And
remember that I believe it's Carrion pushes Shape into there and leaves it there.
Yes. And then his head pops off.
And so what I would, and one thing that really that struck me with this is that Matter Motley wanted to have a witness, right? She picks out one of her Stitch sisters, Meritian, and to be her witness. And there's been a lot of Clive characters that want to have someone to keep them company or someone to witness what they do, right? Like Pinhead wants Harry D'Amour to chronicle what he does in the Scarlet Gospels. We've got Nyx, wanting to have someone to keep him company in the dark. And in the
Damnation Game, you have Mamulian.
Mamulian and
Death Needs a Company, right?
Yeah.
They go in there and they open the door. And I particularly like the fact that the key is like a living thing. The key is just this kind of serpentine thing that slips into the keyhole, and then the door opens, and she gives the word to the sack brood, and she fires a ray with her wand up to the top of the pyramid, and the pyramid starts opening up. All the sides start opening up, and a torrent of sack brood comes out from each pyramid. And they're the ones who are going to blot out the sky. So they're the ones who are going to do absolute midnight, at least for a time.
And like you were saying earlier, I thought that absolute midnight was sort of a metaphor for just an invasion of the islands of day, and night would be taking over. But it's no, it's very literal. They're blocking out the sun, it's like a comet that is in place of the sun.
So because of blotting out the sun will bring out all the darkness, the literal darkness that's been hiding in the Abarat, the monsters, the things that have been pushed down by the light, the things who have been hunted down by the good people of the Abarat. Once the light is gone, literally they will rise up from the 8 dynasties, the Zyavane. They're like these demons. They're almost like the 7 cardinal sins or something. They're just hiding, and they have followers, and they have children, and they have all these, they're really like demons.
There's Tarva, Zan the Binder, and Leilalo, who sings babies to their graves, and Crawfeet and Quothman and Quothman Shant. who leaves plagues wherever he walks. Claudius Gifi, Ogo Fro, and Gan Nug was the one who called
this apocalypse. It's like it has, instead of 4 writers, there's like several writers of the apocalypse. So each one of these is going to come out and he's going to unmake something, or he's going to spread pestilence, or he's going to spread, kill children. And that's the purpose of the sack brood, because once they start flying, they release this substance called brood groom. Yeah. And it's like this black resinous substance that they secrete. And that creates this kind of dome over the entire Abarat where they themselves become stuck. So nobody can go up and break that because there's 100 mouths there trying to eat you if you get too close to it. Yeah. And
there was one guy that rocketed himself up there to try to cut through them. And then all the onlookers look up and they see his body parts and blood falling down on them. Like, oh my God. Wow, Clive, you got to tone it down a little bit for the kids' books.
The kids love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there's the great scene of the Gan Nug. He rises like a Cthulhu Kraken type creature from out of the Isabella, and it destroys the great head of Yebadim Day. And
there's a great picture of that. There's a great painting. Yeah.
And it's something that Clive does, that he builds these fantastical worlds, and just as we're starting to fall in love with them, then it's like, well, look at here's all these problems, and now it's going to get destroyed. Yeah. Weave World was the first one like that.
Yeah. Well, like you guys talked about at the beginning, though, of the first 2 books are just kind of Candy going around and exploring and really, really showing us the archipelago of the Abarat. And, since we had our adventure through that, now it's time for the destruction of that. Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy to think that this is only the 3rd book out of 5, because so much happens and so much is destroyed. And it's just like, this is like the 2 towers out of the Lord of the Rings of just this is the war, and it's kind of like, where do you go from here? How do you raise the stakes even more than this?
Yeah,
you go to another world entirely.
Yeah, so there's a mirror world underneath the Abarat. It's like as if having 25 islands of the Abarat wasn't enough. No, here's 25 more.
It's like this seemed like it was a 24-sided die, and then it's not that. It's actually there's an upside down underneath the Abarat. So there's going to be,
and something
I'm imagining
something with tentacles pulled them in.
Yeah, and not to go too much into the end of the book already, but this is something that I said on the Imaginer volume, one of the Imaginer episodes, is that Clive's art style has changed. He's doing these smaller, more loose works, but the fact that at the end of this volume, where our heroes are going, where they're journeying into, I think that would be a nice way of saying, okay, so this is why the art now is taking a change in a different direction stylistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So once that the darkness falls, right? So Candy and Malingo are in this island, and at one moment they're separated, and then Candy sees what seems to be Malingo in an alleyway, and she goes in there and starts talking to him, and it actually is not Malingo, it's Christopher Carrion. And he tells her what's going to happen. He tells her that there's a Stormwalker, that Mother Motley. He gives her the plan. And then her friends show up and Christopher Carrion absconds. And that's when they understand that they see all these birds flying in, escaping the sack brood. And they're like, oh, wow, this is happening. And some of them don't want to believe it, but then they're like, yeah, but we really need to get out of here because we need to go. Some people want to be with their loved ones before war comes and the end of the world comes. Some people want to go into it and fight it. So they all go and they steal these boats. And that's where Gaza shows up. So when they're stealing these boats to try to make it to stop Matter Motley, John Mischief, Candy, Eddie, and Malingo are in one boat. And they're too slow. So the mob sees them, and everybody knows who Candy Quackenbush is because the Abarat has these like little winds that tell stories. And so there's a guy whipping people into a frenzy, saying that we need to kill the people from the hereafter. And then they see, oh, there she is. She's stealing the boat. Get her. And Gaza is one of the guys who jumps into the boat, and he's disarmed. And then that's the guy who I think they try to create this love interest between Candy and Gaza, but I really don't see the chemistry there. I mean,
well, yeah, it's this instantaneous sort of feeling that they have. And maybe, like Markus said, maybe it will be explained next time that there's something more to it that we just don't know about yet.
Yeah, I'm going to say that there's some deeper history there that we just aren't aware of yet.
Maybe she has someone else in her head. Okay.
It's getting a little crowded in there.
That's interesting.
But I felt that way too. That it was a little fast, Candy.
Yeah.
But she's young. Young people fall in love fast.
Love at first sight, right?
Yeah.
Love at first sight.
And he's got these golden eyes that seem to be a staple of like Clive Barker characters. They get in the boat and they go to the Abadim Day to speak to the council. And that's when they get there that they see that horrible tragedy where the Sea of Isabella just goes red. And this is like the most goriest scene chapter in the book. It's terrible. They get near the Yebadim Day, and there's one of the guys from the 8 Dynasties, one of the demons, summoning something on top of it.
Yeah, again, Nug is summoning this. Like Markus said, this kraken creature with tentacles crushing the head, the big head that's like where everyone lives.
And at this point, I don't have the illustrations in the book. I'm just listening to an audiobook, and I have an ebook that is very bare bones. But I feel like at this point, I'm playing the movie in my head, right? So I'm imagining this weird shaped head demon with like a little vest and stuff, just having these weird geometric purple shapes on a fire on top of the Yebadim Day. And I was just like completely enthralled. I was listening to the audiobook like on Friday nights. And I was actually in my bedroom, and I was just like, I couldn't stop listening to it. I listened to it well into the night. And it really gets very gory. It really, you see like people are falling to their deaths. Boats are being overturned. The Isabella's red with blood. These people all start overpowering the boat where Malingo and Candy and Gaza and John Mischief are. And they actually have to stomp some people to get them off the boat because otherwise they're all going to die, right? And then that's when Geneva shows up with like these flying people, and they rescue them from the boat. And that's when they all get together at another island where you, Ryan, said that there's a bunch of people that we've seen, characters from the other books, and they're all people who helped Candy in her adventure so far. Yeah. And what was their name?
The Caliphate.
Right. So what did you guys think about that whole thing, that there's like a group of people who were like at every step of the way keeping an eye on Candy?
Can I interrupt just real quick and go back to Yebadim Day?
Oh, sure.
Just 2 points. One of the characters, I can't even remember, I think it's one of the Mischief brothers, identifies why Candy has some information, as he says she's becoming a shaman. And then the Phantomaya have her walk across the water to them, which she does. So something's happening with Candy that scene really is supportive of. That she's still continuing to grow in her power and her, I guess, breadth, for lack of another word, the scope of her abilities. So I wanted to throw that in before we get to Ninnyhammer, because Ninnyhammer is another important place. Yes. Okay, you guys go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, going back to that part, she becomes very messianic, right? She's literally walking on water. She goes from being almost, a lost girl running away from home, unhappy about her life and who she is, and all of a sudden here she is, full of power, with a piece of the Abarat, which is what is the Abarat? What is your interpretation of it?
To me, it seems like it's like this. It's like the Everville, right? Where it's this metafiction on top of the main fiction that says that there are authors and words and imagination that create the world around you. And so that's kind of the way I see Abarat is made of words, right? And so that's Clive Barker writing the story into being.
You know, though, doesn't Zephario say that it's actually that one picture, the frame filled with all these blocks of color?
Yeah. It's just like a book of magic, right?
Yeah, it's a book of magic for sure. And I think, like he says, there's 8 volumes, and then there's 88 something. I can't remember what. And then of course, if you turn the 8 on its side,
it's infinity.
You have the symbol. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's infinity. So it's all the magic in infinity, I guess.
Yeah.
And they have a page of it, or part of a page.
Yeah, and that's where I say this book really gets into the metaphysics of things too.
Oh yeah,
on the scale of, say, The Great and Secret Show or Everville, and Ryan, what you just said, is really brilliant.
Marcus, you're probably looking at the Abarat in your wall right now. Because you have a painting that's on the last page of Imaginer 8.
Yes.
And it's a page depicting, it's a painting with this wall of colors. And there's a kind of a wizard guy who his own presence is like mixing all the colors of the squares. And going back to that episode of Imaginer 8, I think I said something about that painting that you said you loved, which was those squares of color. And looking at the oil paintings that accompany this book, it's like it's a color palette. And it's the colors that Clive Barker has used to construct this world of the Abarat. Yeah. So that's basically the magic. They're the paints, they're the building blocks of this world made out of oil paints. So that was my interpretation of the Abarat. They're like the atoms of the paintings are the tubes of paint. Yeah. So that was my interpretation.
And so you need to wield the art in order to wield that power. And for anyone who does have the hardcover, that painting is on page 284 in Abarat 3.
I'm going to go there right now.
And it's also on page 448 is the picture of the big picture with the squares.
Yes, which was actually a real thing that, tiles that Clive physically painted.
Wow. So separate tiles.
Yeah. You can see pictures on not on the archive, but on clivebarker.info of the actual tiles of themselves that Clive painted.
And technically, from a bunch of a small hand of primary colors, you can make infinite colors. So in that sense, with just a few handfuls of Abarat, you can create infinity. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. If you guys, on page 445 in the book, let's see, which character is she talking to? I don't know. She's talking to somebody. And that person says, tell me about the Abarat. Or maybe, let's see. No, Candy asked. Okay, she must be talking to Zephario, I guess.
Yeah, she is. Yeah,
Tell me about the Abarat. And then, she says, I know what it isn't. It's not the almanac. It's not a guide to magic. I think maybe it's magic itself.
Yeah.
Am I right? And he says, well, to an extent, a lot of magic, enough to fuel the creation of a glyph to carry all these innocent people. Mm-hmm. And, and then they go on and they're discussing, and that's when he says, I have one piece of one page, and he tells her there are no words in the Abarat, it is colors. So anyhow, that's where it is described, and it keeps getting back to the number 8.
Yeah. So this is the magic of color and creation and painting and imagination, and when you've got the books of the art, you've got the story tree.
Yeah.
And then Imagica is just, it's like the world of the collective imagination of people creating the world and the universe around them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chapter when Candy is inside the Stormwalker, which, by the way, there's an amazing painting of the Stormwalker. A giant boat 2 miles long that walks on legs of lightning.
Yeah.
So this is the vessel that Matter Motley is entering to survey her takeover of the Abarat. And it was created by, it was given to her by one of the Nephori, right? So one of the creatures who live beyond the stars. They seem to be very old, possibly immortal, very evil, or at least amoral. And it's unclear what is Matter Motley's endgame. She says she wants to become the Empress of Midnight, right? But
she's clearing the way so that the Nephori can come take over the Abarat, and it's kind of like, well, I'm sure that they'll raise me up to some kind of governess or whatever in their new world,
or she's just using them for now, and will betray them later.
Well, that's a pretty tall order if she thinks she can do that. I don't know.
With these ancient gods from another dimension.
Yeah.
Well, there's that one line in there too about, you're talking about her ultimate plan, where she's, I believe, thinking, and she's saying there's going to be one more season and then death incarnate.
Yeah.
I mean, how can she be an empress if everything is dead?
Yeah.
So I was puzzled about that. What does she see is going to happen? And
she's one of these
that was going to be my next point.
Clive Barker characters, right? Like Nyx. I'm going to murder the world.
Yeah,
or Death Boy. We're going to keep each other company in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. But at the same time, she does things that kind of seem like she has some other plans in sight. Because, for example, she creates a camp for political prisoners, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she has her seamstresses and her stitchlings go across all the islands of the Abarat, and they gather around all the dissidents, all the guys who speak out loud against Matter Motley, and they throw them all in.
Or might. Yeah,
or might, yes, exactly.
Might, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically think crimes or even future think crimes that she gathers up about 7,000 of people from the Abarat, and she drops them all in a prisoner camp in Scoriae, which is a volcanic island near the edge of the Abarat, which apparently for flat earthers, they probably love this book because the Abarat is completely flat. And then once you get to the end of the world, the Isabella just falls off like a giant waterfall into it.
Yeah.
Which probably means that the Isabella is constantly renewing itself, or that the waters that fall over the edge of the world somehow make their way back into the Isabella.
Yeah, maybe it's a sea. It's a sea on the other side, and it comes back around, like you said, and feeds itself.
Yeah. They're kind of sense. Like when
or maybe
Dante,
maybe on the other side it's quiddity.
Right. So what's the point? What's the point of her arresting people who might speak against her if ultimately it seems like at the end of this plan there won't be anybody left? So she might as well be killing everybody.
Well, and
that's why.
I understood it to be that she didn't want everyone to rebel against her at once. So she took them as if like to say, okay, I'm going to question you, but she wanted to put them in this secret camp and kill them all without everybody knowing, because she wanted a little more time to attack, with everybody in chaos and disarray and not organizing to confront her directly.
Okay.
Flip to page 359 and 60. This does reveal a little bit, subjugated to their empress's will, the people of the Abarat would not see the monstrous presences in their world, but year on year. So it's not going to happen all at once. I had sort of misinterpreted it a little, but year on year, the work would be done. The land plundered and left fallow, the seed sown until the time of harvest was upon them, and with that harvest, the end of this foolish game of life. One last season of fecundity, and then capital T, time no longer, life no longer, and capital D, death, not capitalized incarnate, but capital D, death incarnate, smiling in the silence. Well, maybe she's not going to live forever. Maybe she just wants to take it all with her.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that one part of this story, too, is that, when you said the end of time with a capital T, that she cannot figure out, nobody understands, including us readers, nobody understands the 25th hour and the tower there and the people who are from there.
Yep. Good point.
So if I can go back to something that opens one of Clive Barker's books, he talks about the past, the present, memory, prophecy, and fantasy, right?
Yeah.
So it's the past, the present, and the dreaming moment within. Yeah. So I think that the dreaming moment within is the 25th hour. Is that moment where it seems like time stands still when you're doing something. It's that nexus of imagination where time is meaningless.
Yeah.
I mean, Markus, you're a painter, you're a poet. I mean, you know when you're working, it feels like time kind of stands still, right? It's you get into that fugue state, and it's like whatever you're doing, that is your universe at the moment, and it can be a universe on its own. It can feel like you've been working on something for a long time, and then you lift your head and it's probably just been an hour. Or you can be working on it the whole day, and all of a sudden you look out the window and it's night. And where did that go? I don't know if you have any opinion on that. I'm probably telling you how you feel. Which is
no, that's really true though. And if also thinking about time, it's kind of like to go to another one of Clive's works. It's like Chiliad, where if your view is wide enough that you can see all of time, both the past, the present, and the future, and or you can look at smaller sections. But it also reminds me of the Spire from The Great and Secret Show in regards to the time out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 25th hour is the only island that the sack brood cannot cover. So anytime they start getting close to the 25th hour, they just burn away, and there's a hole in the sky over the 25th hour, which really vexes Mater Motley. She doesn't like that. She doesn't like the fact that she's not in control. And if I can go to one of the things that you were saying, Peggy, ultimately, absolute midnight, leaving the earth fallow, letting the darkness reign. She wants to turn every single island. She wants to destroy any idea that there's different times in different islands, I thought. She wants to make sure that it's always midnight on every island, and every island will look just like Gorgosium.
Okay. Makes sense.
Literally.
But the sack brood aren't going to live forever. That was only going to be for a few days, but enough time for her to do everything that she wants to do, for all of the Zyavane to come up, the 8 dynasties to come up and cause chaos, and then she's paving the way for the Nepheri. And then the Requiacs will feel like they can come up from the bottom of the ocean. So
that's true, that the stars will come back. They start coming back at the end of the book because the sack birds start dying off and pieces keep falling from the sky.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is that behind the stars are the Nepheri.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to show up at some point. So they might be the ones who finally take away the stars.
Well, it's interesting.
They're not going to be bit players.
It's interesting that book 4 it was going to be called Dynasty of Dreamers, which makes me think of the 8 dynasties. But now it's going to be called Kree Rising, which is like, oh man, if there's another group of evil creatures that are taking over the Abarat, I can't take it.
Or good creatures.
Maybe they're good creatures.
There are whole books. Come on. There's going to be a lot of evils coming up.
The Dynasty of Dreamers name, I think, goes back to what Jose was saying in regards to the 25th hour, and that being, more about dreaming and creation and how that has an effect on the perception of time. But I think Kree is just the Abaratian magic itself. But I'm not sure. From what I've gathered from Clive's old Facebook posts and things like that. That was like 2014, so I'm sure things have changed quite a bit since then.
So once they're making their way in the boat and they get attacked by the seamstresses on their fever wheels, they get rescued by Geneva. They get deposited in an island, and then along the way they get captured. I know I'm skipping a lot of stuff here, but they do get captured, and Candy finds herself being captured along with her friends, and they are taken to Scoriae, to the prisoner camp. Mm-hmm. And that's where they discover that what's going on with Matter Motley, and the Stormwalker appears, and she's going to be there for the execution of all these people. And we're jumping over some things we want to talk about as well, like Princess Boa and Finnegan Hobb.
Yeah,
but for now,
I was thinking about.
This part here that she creates she wants to get out of the prison camp, but she doesn't want to escape just her and her friends. She wants to save everybody. Yeah. So what they do is they create a giant glyph. And there's a big picture of that glyph, right, Marcus?
I
think it's in one of the triptych, in one of the Imaginer books.
Yeah.
That's a great looking glyph.
Is there a picture of that in this book? In Abarat?
I believe so. I'm trying to find the page right now.
I actually got the image on my computer and I'm looking at it, so it's a beautiful painting. And it's kind of like a counterpoint to the Stormwalker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. It's a flying thing made of hope and magic, right? That's what they call it. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, the Stormwalker is more has these very, very sharp edges. It's very blocky and pointy and menacing looking, with the legs of lightning that are striking the ground and the sea and lighting the tips of the waters on fire. And the Stormwalker is a diptych, and it's on 458 and 459.
Nice.
I still haven't been able to find the glyph, though. There is a piece of the glyph on 503, but I know that the glyph is somewhere in this volume.
And Peggy, this is another moment where Candy shows that she's transcending her humanity and becoming almost like a messiah, like one of the John says, a shaman, because she does the impossible. She not only walks on water and she creates this giant glyph that nobody ever created before.
Yeah. It's like parting the Red Sea.
The glyph is on 456 and 457, so it's the page before the Stormwalker.
456, 457.
But the glyph is more very circular, very symmetrical, colorful. So yes, it is a nice contrast to the Stormwalker, where the Stormwalker is devoid of any color.
And talking about contrast, this is just going to be a little comment before I forget to say it. Did any of you guys have this same reaction I did when Mater Motley is on the Stormwalker and she's looking at this map thing she's got that basically makes the entire Abarat vulnerable to her, because she can see all of the weaknesses of every island. She knows what emotions are going on every island. And I just flashed to the beautiful moment, which is just such a loving visual of the Abarat. And then now she, again, she's corrupted, or everything Mater Motley touches is corrupted, whether she corrupted it or the Neferee corrupted it or whatever. But so you've got the beautiful moment, and then you've got the corrupt map of the Abarat.
Yeah, so it's like an that's a good point. It's like an anti-Abarat or anti-beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's a nice dichotomy.
Yeah. So that just really struck me. I even made a note on the page, opposite, a beautiful moment.
Yeah, well, that's a really good observation.
Yes.
It's like she's ripping something out of the Abarat and splaying it out where she can just use it to understand what's going on.
It's like it's like, I hate to keep going back to Lord of Illusions, but it's like, it's like, here I'm going to make you see people the way I see them, and this is my view of the Abarat. Here's all of its corruption and its weakness, and Nick's putting his fingers into people's heads and making them see, mud and shit.
Yeah, she's looking at the Abarat as if through a glass darkly.
Well said. Yeah.
So let's go and talk about Boa, right? So Boa leaves Candy, or is expelled from Candy, and what she does is she has her own plans. So she goes to meet her former groom, Finnegan Hobb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember, she tries Carrion first and can't find him.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
She goes to Gorgasi looking for Carrion, thinking she can strike things up with him again and they can conquer together. Mm-hmm. But all she finds is Mater Motley's tower, and she has to throw a seamstress off the top of the tower, and then she gets out of there, and then she decides to go looking for her husband. It's like, what a beast she is.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's like, all right, I guess. Because Finnegan Hobb can't give her magic, right? So she goes to Carrion first, and she discovers, or she believes he's dead. So it's like, all right, I'll go to Finnegan, I guess.
Yeah, second choice.
Yeah.
So we know what she was getting from Carrion. She was getting access to magic and access to, power and stuff. What do you think she was getting out of Finnegan Hobb?
Was it? I want to say, was it just like
political
the
power,
royalty?
right?
Yeah,
the brawn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, muscle. She was going to be royalty that could rule over the entire Abarat when she measured him, when she married him.
She was already a princess, right? Though she was the daughter of King Klaus.
just of day. But he was day and night together.
Yeah, so it'd be a marriage of the two. So she could have been over both.
So she's kind of trailing off Christopher Carrion just to get the magic out of him, but then she wanted to marry an aristocrat of sorts.
Yeah. She's a very manipulative person, so she would have found her way to,
And Finnegan ends up going to the tomb, the catacomb of the dragon skeletons, right?
Yes, it's like an elephant graveyard.
Yeah, except it's where the dragons go, or they're taken after they die, or they go there to die. And there is a guardian there, which is
Ditha Moss.
Yes, Moss. He's half man, half dragon, and all crooked, apparently. Yeah. That mating did not yield a very good-looking offspring.
I have a photo of me wearing a T-shirt of Ditha Moss standing next to the painting of Ditha Moss.
Yeah, Ditha Moss was the first Clive painting I ever saw in person. So
same here.
Yeah.
And so he goes there and he feels the power of the dragons, the power of the bones of the dragons, and he hears this voice, and it's Ditha Moss, one of his old nemesis. And then all of a sudden they're talking about what's going on, and Ditha Moss says, yes, Princess Boa is alive, right? So, and then Princess Boa shows up. And as soon as she shows up, she starts manipulating Finnegan right away. Yeah, she's just trying to get him. And again, I'm not sure what she was trying to accomplish here. Maybe she was it going to awake something in that tomb? Did she just want revenge from the dragons?
And it's weird that she pushes so hard to kill Ditha Moss that Finnegan is starting to see through her, and it's like, well, before he was ready to marry her, and in this one moment, she's just destroying it all.
Right. He's looking at her, and he's not recognizing her completely.
Yeah, he doesn't even believe he's not even sure that it's really her for a while.
Well, I mean, she was trapped in candy for a long time though, so it could have made her
right.
That's
what she says at one point, right? She says, I was trapped for 16 years inside the prison, and now I'm here. I'm still having a hard time understanding why the Phantomaya wanted to preserve her. Why didn't the Phantomaya
I don't understand that either. Is that it seems like she was such a sacred and integral part to saving possibly the Abarat, and then
there's a moment where when the Caliphate is talking to Andy, that they try to explain, that it was a hastily concocted plan and they were arrogant. But they explain that it was probably they made some mistakes, but they don't explain what the purpose was. I
want to I keep saying this, but I also want to say that maybe the Phantomaya knew what they were doing, and then they have plans that extend beyond what we know. Yeah.
Plans within plans, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've still got 2 more books to go.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, Clive has this way of making things look strange, but then they all make sense at the end. So that's definitely something that he might as well just bring it all with a neat bow at the end, and it'll all make sense.
Yeah, and, that's the crazy thing is this book feels like such a climax that it's crazy to think that this is only the middle part of this series, because it feels like this should be the end game of it all, but it's not. It's just the beginning of what's to come.
Right. If he hadn't created so many loose threads in this book, it could seem like a conclusion of sorts. They defeat Matter Motley, and then if she didn't fall off the edge of the world, that could be like an interesting spot where they could just wrap up the story with a few more chapters.
Well, and she didn't really defeat Matter Motley. She just won one battle. I mean, Matter Motley just left.
No, I just mean that there's so much apocalypse in this. It's just kind of like, but so how are you going to up the stakes even more in the true conclusion to this series? But I'm sure Clive has plans within plans, as you guys said.
Well, the Abarat has been pretty much scorched earth, right? So now they need to reseed it. I got a feeling that it's like a function going, it's like a sinusoidal function. We just saw the sinusoidal function go up and then reach 0, and now we're halfway point where everything is destroyed, and now we're going to go down into the negative area, and it's going to go back up at the end. So that's my hope for the story, that's what's going to happen. So we have a complete function period where things start off where we're left off at the end in a point where things are somehow back to normal but different. So it'll be a new beginning.
I'm predicting that it's going to be like the end of Imagica, where Gentle is remapping the path of the Imagica using his imagination. I think that Candy's going to do something similar to rebuild the Abarat using the Abarataraba somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he grabs his color palette, and Clive is the god of this universe, right?
Yeah.
So it gets a little meta at the end.
It does.
Do you guys have any other chapters you want to?
Oh yeah, like
when
they're falling and there's words going by them.
Right.
Oh yeah. That's very almost like Plato's forms.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The perfect archetypes of things.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is like this is a very, very metaphysical book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, I really do think that it rivals the books of the art in that regard of just imagination, metaphysics, density, all of that.
Yep.
It's like Candy is dipping her hands. Candy's like the representation of the audience, and almost like a representation of our imagination growing as we read the books, to the point where we become more powerful. We can imagine more things. We have a universe growing inside ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then when they defeat Matter Motley, and how they do that is the glyph ship that has all the prisoners. So they decide that the only way that they can face off against the Stormwalker is to go ahead and collide with it.
Yeah, head on, because it has no guns on the front, only on the sides.
Right.
Yeah.
So they do that as the Scoriae Island volcano is erupting again, which is something that Matter Motley is proud of. She says, "Oh, look at that! I even made the volcano go back up."
Yeah.
And the Stormwalker is just on top of that volcano, and the glyph hits the ship and it drops it onto the volcano, and it kind of breaks in half or something.
Yeah.
Disintegrate.
Yeah. It was a very big boat, but like 2 miles long.
Yeah.
But somehow it falls onto the volcano, and that's how they destroy it. Mm-hmm. And there's that last face-off between Zephario, who met Candy in the prisoner camp.
Yeah.
He reveals himself as Christopher Carrian's father. He says he wants to. She tells him, "Oh, your son is still alive," and he's like, "Well, I would like to talk to my son." And then he gives her the piece of the Abarat Araba, the magic, so she can, fuel the glyph for the escape. And then they find themselves inside the Stormwalker, and she helps Zephario meet with Christopher Carrian. And I was surprised to know that he didn't just disappear after the fire. He stayed there for a while with the family, right? So Zephario was still cradling Christopher Carrian even after the fire and all the... Yeah.
I don't think Matter Motley knew, because that's when what did she do? She caught him singing a lullaby to Carrian, and she went off. She was not.
She started poisoning Zephario's soul.
She made him go crazy. That's right.
Yeah.
He blinded himself.
Yeah.
That's why he blinded himself.
Right. He didn't want Christopher Carrian to see his father burned, because he didn't want to scare him. So he only picked Christopher Carrian up whenever he was sleeping, and he would sing that lullaby. And then Christopher Carrian's only memory of his parents, he doesn't remember his mother, but he remembers a pair of eyes looking down at him and saying, "I love you," which was his own father. So that's the thing that's the seed that Zephario put into Christopher Carrian that allows him to know what love is. And when he said the word love, Matter Motley sewed his lips up.
Yeah.
Which shows how terrible she is. So anyway, the Zephario and Christopher Carrian and Matter Motley and Candy are all aboard the Stormwalker, right? So it's all gonna come to a head here, and then Matter Motley finds out that Zephario is alive, and Zephario reminds Christopher Carrian that he is loved, and that he doesn't have to follow Matter Motley, right? That's when the things all end up. The allegiances of Christopher Carrian become clear at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we're following this Clive Barker principle of evil is always undone by its own appetite, right? Because Matter Motley is stacking up a lot of like Jenga blocks to make the world the way she wants it, and it seems like it's going to be pretty easy for and she's so arrogant. She thinks that everyone that's against her is nothing. Is they're worthless and they have no power compared to her, and all of that hubris is gonna bring her down, I think, in the next couple of books.
And the source of her power also comes from the people that she enslaves in her dolls, right?
Yeah.
That's right. And she lost. Did she lose that when Zephario's power?
Her dress was undone.
Yeah.
The doll escaped. So
what were you going to say, Peggy?
Oh, I just said yes. The dolls escape. Zephario, does he say a magic word or something? And the dolls just all escape, and that kind of excuse me. That sort of is where she turns around and says, "I'm going to be back later."
Yeah.
So it seems like now she's going to be relying a lot more on the power of the Nepheri. And that's probably going to... They probably don't really care whether she lives or dies, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right, because there's a Nephari that manifests itself in the Stormwalker, and he's assisting Matter Motley, and he's one of the guys who finds Zephario as he's dying, and he heals him because he says they still need him, and it's unclear what they were going to do with Zephario, but before he dies, he manages to send his soul into Candy's mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he uses her as kind of like a weapon of sorts. He's like the bullet, and he enters Candy, and he says, "I'm going to shoot myself out through you, so you can, so we can defeat Matter Motley." So that's what happens. And again, Candy is being used as a vessel, and she's being given all this power, and she's instrumental in the defeat of Matter Motley.
Yeah,
it's a strange way that Zephario does that, but he shoots himself out like a whole bunch of little bullets, and they destroy the dolls that are on Matter Motley's dress, and each one of those dolls had a soul, and she had her entire family captured on that orchard fire and trapped in her dress, and that's what was giving her all that power as well.
Page 545, guys. Quote, "The effect upon Mater Motley was catastrophic. Each time one of the dolls came apart, her body convulsed, the scale of the motion mounting so that she was quickly reduced to the status of a doll herself, helpless in the grip of forces she could not control. And, twice she had attempted to summon up Wildings to drive Zephario back, but the violence with which she was being thrown around robbed her of the breath to finish them. And that's when she shouts at Candy, 'I will find you.' And she conjures up that petal thing to get her out of there." Losing those dolls brought her down.
She was really arrogant, and she thought Candy was nothing, and she's and now I think she's going to be a lot more desperate going forward.
Yeah, and probably even more ruthless than she is now.
Yeah.
I love the way she disappears. She envelops herself in like some volcano lava, and then she disappears, right?
She creates some kind of a petal thing. It's that's right there too somewhere.
It's like a teleport.
The zombie hand was already destroyed by the.
Yes, but you're right. She calls it forth. She calls it forth from the lava crust beneath her feet. 7 petals, enclosing her in a sheath of mottled gray and black, which I presume is the picture on page 547, like a toxic flower that had yet to blossom.
So these creatures, these villains in this book, they always just take and take and take from everybody, including their souls. And the poor Candy is the one that gives and gives and gives.
Yeah.
So the Nephari is left behind, right? So she kind of tells the Nephari, kill them all. And the Nephari doesn't really do that. He just kind of tries to kill Candy and leaves.
Well, he kills all the Stitchlings, interestingly.
Yeah.
I know.
I noticed that.
He kills the Stitchlings, and then he goes home to report, right?
Yeah, yes. Which again makes you wonder what the Nephari's true endgame and desire is.
Because they didn't kill any of the prisoners. They makes it very clear that he killed the Stitchlings, and then he tried to kill Candy. He destroys the piece of island where she is, and they start floating away to the end of the world. But what were we going to say?
Oh, there's a painting of the Nephari on page 548, and it almost looks like a lobster type body with a xenomorph head, and it's kind of Giger-esque in that regard. 548. But yeah. But yeah, the what I said earlier about the dynamic between, or the war between night and day, it does make me wonder if there's going to be something more between the sea and the stars with the Nephari versus the Requiacs. Because you do have my second favorite scene in this book is when you see what happens to Rojo Pixlr, and you realize that he's become one with the Requiacs, and Matter Motley sees him, and it's almost this horror, the body horror scene just her seeing what he's become. And yeah, that's also another really Lovecraftian scene, in my opinion.
Did
that
he
I love.
escape from Matter Motley?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's down. Remember, Candy is dreaming, and I think she's dreaming.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a Scoriae, and she's dreaming, and she sends her dream down into the Isabella, and she's looking for the Requiex. And I think it's right at the end of the chapter. I think she thinks she's looking at a Requiex, and then Pixlr says hello or something like that.
Yeah.
You could find that page because it was pretty. But yeah,
he's become a sort of an envoy to the Requiex, or like an
avatar.
Yeah.
He's also been mutated though too. This transfiguration of his flesh, and the way Clive describes it is pretty gruesome. But
he has all these tentacles coming out from behind him, and he controls the water. And he's one. There's a chapter where they fight Matter Motley and the Requiex because she was again vexed that Comexo City was still bright and illuminated, and she wanted to bring down every single light there. Yeah. And that's a very interesting chapter where they fight.
Yes.
So it makes you think that the Nephori and the Requiex have very big roles to play in the next couple of books.
Yeah.
For sure. But
here it is. It's on page. The tentacles unknotted themselves, and there below her was the man who'd spoken those words that she's thinking about. It's going to take time to root out all the magic in these islands. She once heard somebody saying, we've got a lot of books to burn, a lot of spirits to break. And that's what Pixlr had said in book 1. And so then there was the man who'd spoken those words, though he'd changed much since their last encounter. Hello again, said Rojo Pixlr. Yeah. So he's still here with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end,
and where's the kid?
Yeah, where is he? He was taken by the Requiex, right? There was a giant tentacled hand that wrapped him.
But I think the Requiex
as
Pixlr, right? I mean, he really cared about the kid and wanted to save him.
Yeah.
I thought
was the first.
Him out of the room he was in with Mater Motley, along with a flood of water, and I thought he pushed the kid out with that flood of water, and then I lost track. I don't remember.
There was like a bunch of tentacles that came up and formed a hand and grabbed the kid, and then it was just they took him out of the room, right?
I guess so. Yeah. So he'll be back, I imagine.
Oh yeah. I think the kid is going to have a major role as well, because it's weird that in Comexo City, the troops that were fighting the seamstresses, Stitchlings, they were an innumerable amount of kids, Comexo kids, with no weapons. They were just overpowering them by the sheer numbers. And I'm just imagining them with their little clown noses, just like running around overpowering everybody, just like grabbing them and holding them down to the ground or something. The
Stitchlings really all they had was knives. I mean, they don't have any sophisticated weapons either.
Yeah, but it seems like those Comexo kids that are fighting the troops, they seem to be not as sensitive as the first Comexo kid.
Yeah,
first Comexo kid is always very, very, very emotional, very, very scared of everything that's going on. Yeah. There's going to be some interesting developments in the next book whenever that comes out. So when they fall off the edge of the world, right? So they're falling, and there's nothing there but darkness. And it's I think Malingo's head, Gaza, and Candy. So they're the only ones falling down over the edge of the world, right?
Yes.
And there's parts of Clive Barker's work where something like this happens, like the end of Imagica, where we're told that the Imagina is a circle, and then Gentle and Piopa fall into the middle of the circle or travel there, which is a place out of the world, out of the time, out of the universe. There's also in Maximilian Bacchus and his traveling circus, there's a clown that falls off the edge of the world. And then he just shows up as the rising moon from the other side, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm here," he's gone into another plane of existence. And it seems like that happens with Candy as well, because they're falling. We were talking about what happens when they fall off the edge of the world and they start seeing that their screams and their words are visible. Yeah. They're like a movie character who can see his own subtitles.
Ribbons of work.
Yeah.
And at first, it seems like that's going to be the way that they can get out of there, because Malingo's head is snatched by something. We never see what it is, and it starts screaming. And as he flies off screaming, Candy sees like his scream is like a shiny fluorescent kind of silvery thread, and she holds on to it. But then, of course, Malingo stops screaming, and that goes slack.
Mm-hmm.
And then she reaches out into the void, and there's something there, right? There's something that holds on to her.
It's like a tentacle.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Which means that the dark is alive by itself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She grabbed hold of whatever tentacles were growing from the, and capital letters, other side.
Yeah. So it looks like they're not going to fall forever.
Nope. And that's when he gets into the metaphysics. Everything was a mirror. If prisons, then liberty, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't know where she is. She's just in another world.
Yeah.
If silence, then song. If darkness, then light, right? If nothing, then everything. So there's another world on the other side of this void.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's going to be another group of islands here. So the adventure is going to continue.
Maybe. Why not?
And we've been waiting for the other chapter in this story for the last 9 years now.
Yeah. And Clive said in the last interview that he was working on the final draft.
Yeah, his priorities just lie with Deep Hill first before he finishes the final draft of Abarat 4.
Yeah, so we'll have Deep Hill to look forward to before then Abarat 4, and he'll be continuing to work on Abarat 5, and he's got some ideas for the third book of the art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're waiting for the art too. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's only one guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's got all of this in his head, and he's trying to give it to us, but he can only do it at a normal pace, plus the health problems he's had over the years. Holy cow.
Right.
I did want to make a point before we close. It's really important, I think, maybe not a complete turnaround, but Christopher Carrion, you know, he saves Candy's life. He attacks Mater Motley. He's not the same guy he was. So it'll be interesting to see what he's going to be like in the next installment.
Yeah. He might become one of the heroes. Or
I think so.
If he's an archetypal, hero that redeems himself, he'll probably sacrifice himself in some way.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Well,
Bo and Christopher. Yeah, Bo and Christopher. He might end up being the good guy on the side of night against Boa on the side of light. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the dynamic reverse. Yeah.
He might want to make amends. Definitely
one of the themes in this series. And one time when Clive was talking with the kids, he made a point of that maybe people can change and maybe people can redeem their evil. And remember, that's what Zafario wanted to tell Christopher.
Yeah.
Zafario used to be the most feared man on the Abarat.
Yeah, and now all the children on his little island love him and bring him,
trinkets that they find. Yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe that's going to be one of the overarching themes of the series is going to be the redemption, and some will be redeemed, and some I don't think will. I think Mater Motley is not.
Yeah, she's irredeemable completely.
Yeah.
So that ultimately the only way out of a war is growth, redemption, acceptance, maybe forgiveness. So maybe that forgiveness will be directed at Christopher Carrion.
Yeah.
I kept thinking they could also shoot missiles at the sack brood, just blow them up.
They'd have to go to the hereafter for that, though.
Yeah,
and they don't want stuff from the hereafter.
Yeah.
A small offhand little mention here that when Candy is in the machine with her dad in the hereafter, she does see that there's some materials used to build the machine that didn't seem like they were from our world. And so there's one brief moment where they say she was wondering if that could be if there was still any commerce between the hereafter and the Abarats. Yeah. And they had just found a way to contact someone who would give them those parts. So I thought that was interesting because
that's another loose end, right? It's another little mystery that we're gonna hopefully
it's easy to accept that Chickentown might not have been the only port of entry from the Abarat into the hereafter. Yeah. So who knows?
Or Merkit.
Mr. Merkit. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Is floating into the 25th hour with Diamanda. They're being very happy together.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Well, it's a great book to read in a year that hasn't been very good, and a week for myself that wasn't very good. But I, got into the book. I haven't read it before. I had it for a long time, since 2011, and I was like, I'm not going to read it. I'm going to wait until the next book comes out. But then for this episode, I was like, it's time to read the book, Joe. So I read the book, and I'm glad I did. I had a great time reading the book. Yes.
Yeah, plus it's a long wait. I mean, you didn't expect it to be 9 years when you said that.
No, I didn't. Because, you remember, I mean, Abarat came out in 2002.
Yeah.
I think, and it was supposed to be like one book every 2 years.
Well, but then Abarat 2 was like 07, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of them have taken longer than he expected, and longer than the previous one.
Hey, even the creation took 6,000 years.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, we're not rushing Clive. He's gonna make it when it's ready. So
yeah.
Well, the last thought I had when I finished, and of course I'd read it before, but I read it again for this, and I closed that book, and I wasn't even pondering or anything. It just jumped into my head. What a movie!
Yes.
Come on,
right?
Yeah.
Can make the movies. Because I think he said one time he didn't want to make the movies until he was done, because the characters would all be, middle aged by the time.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but I want a movie of these books.
When I first read the description of the Stormwalker, it made me put the book down and just go, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was reading this without access to the painting, so I was making the movie in my head. And, for example, the Nephori, I just Googled it up. I saw the paintings, and I was thinking a completely different thing. So I got a chance to build it in my mind first before I actually saw the painting.
Yeah. And the Nephori are these... They're sort of like the Iad, right? They're these creatures from beyond that all they care about is chaos and death and insanity, and they don't really they have this alien way of thinking that's not compatible with the rest of us.
Yeah.
Right. It's like Markus was saying. They're very Lovecraftian. They're very old gods, right? The old ones.
Yeah, but then at the same time, the Requiacs are also kind of like that too. They're it's so. You've got all of these horrible things converging on the Abarat at the same time.
Although the Requiac seems to be a little more verbose, communicate.
It's interesting, but they had to interface with a person to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's interesting because the Requiacs, in book 2, when we were hearing the mention of the Requiacs, we thought, that they were going to be these horrible things, and the last thing you want is them coming up to the earth, and it's like, when you get to Abarat 3, you're like, no, there's stuff that's way worse than the Requiacs.
Just when you thought there couldn't be anything any worse.
Yeah.
For me, the Nephori are like all the things that are in the way of making the story come to an end. That's what that they are behind the stars, and somehow the reason why Clive Barker is taking so long to finish the story. That's the real Nephori for me.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
For the podcast coming up next, we will be doing an audio commentary. We're going to be continuing the Clive Barker's A to Z of horror recommendations, doing an audio commentary. F is for Flesh on the H.R. Giger movies. We'll go on to the movie Species. And then we're also going to be doing this role-playing game. We're going to be experimenting with doing a video episode playing this role-playing game Kult Divinity Lost, which they tell us, the publisher tells us, is heavily influenced by Clive Barker. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Anybody who's interested in being a part of that, just give us a holler, put a comment below, and let us know.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
This podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com. We've got an archive of past episodes, news, features, and reviews, along with all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on every other place you can find podcasts. Share your thoughts with us, and share our podcast with your friends. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and news blog that's not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.